The 2025 NFL Draft is over, but the fun never stops for our friends down in Mobile, Alabama at the Reese's Senior Bowl. And once again, we've got their Director of Football Operations, Jack Gilmore, with us, joining us after the draft for some of his reactions. Jack, how we doing? How was the draft for you this past weekend?
Doing good, Dalton. Appreciate you guys having me on. It was another really successful year for us at the Senior Bowl. A lot of credit to our team of scouts. Our executive director at the time, Jim Nagy, a lot of credit to him. Like I said, all of our scouts for another really successful draft.
And I want to get into some of that success that you guys had. 106 players total that attended the Senior Bowl got drafted, over 40% of the draft for the fifth straight year. 50 of the first 102 players selected in the first 3 rounds, 7 first-round picks. And I just want to know, Jack, for you and your staff and everybody involved in the process, and it's a year-round process. It's not just that week in the practices of scouting and finding those players, putting coaching staffs together, everything that happens during the week. What kind of pride do you get, you and your staff get, from hearing those types of numbers and seeing the results play out over the 3 days in the draft, and even afterwards when you see even some of the UDFAs sign?
Yeah, we take a great deal of pride in that. We take a great deal of pride in being a pivotal part of the NFL draft process, and you can't do that if you don't have a good draft. The league has to value your roster and your process, and they obviously do that. Another key thing in the numbers is all 32 teams selected at least one Senior Bowl player. And we accomplished that in the midway of the 5th round. So not only do they value our players, but it's a quality pick. I think, from rounds 1 to 3, if you're an NFL team, you better hit on those picks. And like you said, a lot of those players came from the Senior Bowl. So not only are we, have good numbers, but we're contributing towards, a really important part of the draft, the first 3 rounds. But yeah, we take a great deal of pride in our success and through the draft, and we want to continue to be a pivotal part of the NFL draft process.
So I think it's a great job you guys do empowering those mid and later round picks especially. And I mentioned before also you had 7 of those players selected in the first round, including big-time performers at the Senior Bowl like Shamar Stewart and Walter Nolan up there in the teens. And, so often we see so many of the top prospects, guys that, they think they're locked into the first round or a top 40 selection. They'll skip the Senior Bowl. They'll skip a lot of these all-star games. And, I'm just curious of your opinion on, do you think even those guys, should they participate in, say, something like the Senior Bowl more often, even though they may be locked into a top 40 pick, to really lock in and have these teams get to know who they are in a competitive environment? And it seems just like something we've seen more in recent years. Do you think those top guys should still find their way to compete in something like the Senior Bowl as well?
Absolutely. I think everyone can find value in coming to the Senior Bowl, even the number 1 overall selection. It's a opportunity to get better as a player. You get better at playing football by playing football, and we offer an opportunity to compete against the best of the best. We offer an opportunity to get NFL coaching. So everyone can find value in coming to the Senior Bowl. In terms of the first round, I think a great example of how the Senior Bowl and the All-Star game process can help a player. Look no further than Mississippi quarterback Jaxson. This is a guy who handled the draft process probably as well as anyone could have. Go look at, the phone conversation that, the general manager, Joe Shane, with the Giants, and Coach Dayball, the head coach. The first thing they bring up to Jaxson, after, hello, congratulations, is, hey, man, you killed this process. So Jaxson, coming to the Senior Bowl, getting out in front of all these NFL decision makers, showing what he can do not only on the field but in the meeting rooms, served Jaxson really well. And he worked his way, to be the second quarterback taken off the board, and he snuck into the first round.
Now, I want to ask you about another quarterback, one selected by the Cleveland Browns, and no, it's not that one that everybody's thinking of. It's actually Dillon Gabriel, who you guys also had down at the Senior Bowl, and obviously the Browns take him. There's a lot of noise around him and Shedeur Sanders. It's going to be probably, that team's going to be in the spotlight all summer, preseason, training camp, and it looks like a wide-open competition. I want to know from what you guys learned, your staff, any of the coaches, anybody around the Senior Bowl, what you guys learned about Dillon Gabriel, his football character, everything he can do as a player and as a person, and what equips him really to handle that situation under that much pressure and the spotlight that's going to be on Cleveland alongside Shedeur Sanders, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco. What is it about Dillon Gabriel that makes him, able to handle that sort of situation?
Yeah, so Dillon's a pro. I mean, he's very mature, and he obviously had a lot of experience in college. He was in college for at least 5 years. Started his career, UCF, then went to Oklahoma and finished his career at Oregon. But talk about a prolific NCAA career. He holds the FBS record for all-time TDs. And he's got 155 TDs throughout his college career. The same reasons everyone loved Bo Nix coming out in the draft, that element of starting a lot of games and just being seasoned is why Dillon went so high as well. I think he's got better numbers, if not just as good as Bo Nix. Started over 60 games and again, just a really prolific college career. So he really showcased, his maturity, his professionalism, his intellect while in Mobile. But just on the field, you know, he doesn't possess, ideal height or arm strength. But aside from that, he's got everything you want in a quarterback. And while those things are important, he's able to compensate, with his intellect, his processing. He can make every throw. He's very accurate. I wouldn't bet against Dillon at all, and he's certainly equipped to handle a crowded quarterback room, and especially Shador coming in the same draft class. Dillon's very equipped to handle all that.
So obviously he played at three different schools, and I'm going to talk about the one he finished his career at, the University of Oregon. You mentioned Bo Nix as well, and Oregon actually led all schools in the country with 6 attendees this year at the Super Bowl. Some of the schools at the Senior Bowl. Some of the schools right behind him: Georgia, LSU, Iowa State, Ole Miss. Have you noticed in your communications? First of all, I want to know just how some of those communications go in a general sense with some of the coaching staffs and athletic departments that you have, relationships with. And then also, do you find, and you don't certainly have to name any names or anything, do you find there's some schools and coaching staffs that really emphasize more so to their players, hey, go play in these all-star games, go play in the Senior Bowl, it's extremely valuable to the process, whether you're trying to get drafted or get taken with a higher selection? You find that there's some schools that emphasize that maybe more than others?
Not really. I would say all the coaches pretty much see the value in what the Senior Bowl offers, just because we're a football game. You know, you're going to come compete, you're going to come get better, and like those ideologies align obviously very well with coaches. So the coaches are all, they understand the value that the Senior Bowl brings. Obviously, Oregon has a very talented roster. They're doing a really good job. Marshall Malcow, their general manager, he's a good friend of the Senior Bowl. They we appreciate them sending the Ducks to Mobile. We'll keep taking them.
No, that's great stuff. I mean, obviously, the big schools and the schools that keep winning and the ones that are in the spotlight in the championship race are certainly going to send more players. All right, so now we've got this draft behind us. Nobody starts as early as you guys do on summer scouting, I'm sure of it. I just want to know, how quickly does that transition happen for you and your staff? What does that look like? Do you guys have area scouts like a lot of NFL teams do? Is it split up where you have it where, okay, you have a certain set of guys on each conference, the SEC, the Big Ten, ACC, whatever? Is it a lot of word of mouth and talking to coaches and athletic departments? How exactly does the process go down now in the early part of next year's process of narrowing down that pool of players that you guys are looking for and really getting that watch list going?
Yeah, so our 2026 process started back in February, shortly thereafter our game. Credit to our scouting assistants. They've evaluated over 200 players already. Michael Newsom, Jaxson Roby, they've done a really good job along with Charlie Parkinson. We look at, guys that are returning starters at prominent programs. We look at, production. We look at, all conference lists. And of the 200 players or so that we've evaluated, probably 100 of them are worthy of an invite. And that's a really good chunk of the roster right there. So we might already have, 80% of what we need done for this upcoming draft class already done. And again, credit to our scouting assistants for laying the foundation there. But obviously, a lot of football left to be played. A lot more of the process needs to take place, but off to a really good start so far.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can't wait for the rest. This seems like a very wait-and-see draft class we're going to have coming up in 2026, and I can't wait to see who emerges next year. All right, I'm going to get you out of here on a fun one, speaking of some of those communications. Obviously, your predecessor here, former director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, is now the general manager at Oklahoma. Has he been in your ear at all about, hey, maybe get a couple of Sooners on this list? Is this a couple of guys you should be looking at early on? Or, I'm just wondering if you've heard a little extra from him more so than everybody else.
Nah, not at all. Yeah, no, Jim's definitely talking his roster up right now. He's really excited about, the quarterback there, John Mateer, who transferred in from Washington State. He's excited about him. Jaden Knott, transferred from Cal, running back. We did a lot of work on him last year. Hopefully he bounces back. He's dealt with some injuries, but really talented player. But no, we didn't have any Sooners in the game this year, so hopefully we change that moving forward, and I think we will with our good friend Jim Nagy there and Norman.
Well, we'll certainly see. It's going to be a fun year in the SEC. It's going to be a fun year in Norman. It's going to be a fun year again next year for you guys in Mobile. Jack, I want to thank you. I want to thank your staff. You've talked to all three of us here on the PFF NFL show. You've given us great insight into the Senior Bowl and all the inner workings that go on down there. So, look, have a good year. Have a great summer. Have a great season scouting, and we'll see you next year in February.
Appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks.